Hey you Stygian Dogs, this is a fun one. I was browsing some bookstores last weekend and came across something special that I just couldn't pass up. For me, a typical approach at used bookstores is to purchase based on serendipity. Sure, I'll have something in mind as I browse, but it's my preference that a successful outing be marked by a surprise find tangential to the starting theme, and well, this was a good one. At first glimpse of the spine, I'd assumed it was a Conan novel. Satisfied with that prospect, I'd noticed the authors' names. Thomas and Smith. Wait a minute, what? On the front cover, Stan Lee presents Volume 1 Conan the Barbarian by Roy Thomas and Barry Smith, featuring the hero created by Robert E. Howard, the first 3 adventures of the greatest sword and sorcery hero of all time, and we're promised that it's all in full color. Special preface by Stan Lee. And on the rear, from the northern wastes he came to conquer a world, if he survives. Volume 1 of the complete Marvel Conan, including The Coming of Conan. This, of course, being the first Conan the Barbarian comic from Marvel, originally published in 1970 with an October cover date. The second story is The Lair of the Beastmen. This had a cover date of December 1970. And the third and final story is Twilight of the Grim Grey God, Roy Thomas's adaptation of Howard's The Grey God Passes. And this was originally published in comic form February 1971. And below the contents, by Crom they should not, and by Crom they shall not. Plus, special introductions by Stan Lee and Roy Thomas. As a fun piece of trivia, well, Twilight of the Grim Grey God was published as the 3rd issue. 2 other stories had been prepared first. Zukala's Daughter, which would be published as issue number 5, and The Tower of the Elephant, which would be published as issue number 4. Opening it up, we see the title page. Stan Lee presents the complete Marvel Conan the Barbarian Volume 1 by Roy Thomas and Barry Smith, featuring the hero created by Robert E. Howard, a Tempo Star book distributed by Ace Books, Grosset and Dunlap, a Filmways company, publishers, New York. The entire book edited by Roy Thomas, and we see here Conan Volume 1, published in 1978, Conan Properties. It's in pretty good condition for a 45-year-old book. And here's the short preface by Stan Lee, written in a very Stan Lee-like fashion. Conan, perhaps the most savage, most dramatic adventurer of all. Conan, perhaps the most unique sword and sorcery hero in modern literature. Conan, perhaps the most fearless and fascinating fighter from an age before history, from a land lost in time. It was Robert E. Howard who created him, who breathed life into the legend and glory into gore. And it was Marvel Comics who adapted him, who under the literary aegis of Roy Thomas, fleshed him out in illustrated panel form, thus presenting and revealing him to a whole new generation of readers, creating anew the sparks which flamed the rebirth of the cult that is Conan. But why this ever-increasing fascination for the bludgeoning hero of the Hyborian age? Why such an army of readers, such a legion of fans? Whatever the reasons, one thing is certain. Simplistic statements and shallow logic will not provide the answer. It is far too easy to say that people are turned on by the aura of violence and semblance of savagery. No, the reasons are far deeper, far more complex. Perhaps the hint of magic, the sense of wonder, the revelation of a noble soul within a bestial breast. Perhaps all of these and more may partially account for the phenomenon of Conan. Whatever the reasons, you're in for a treat. On the pages that follow, you'll savor the electrifying excitement of epic adventure in another age, the age of Conan the Mighty, Conan the Vengeful, Conan the Lusty. But above and beyond all else, you'll thrill to the saga, as only Marvel can present it, of Conan the Barbarian. Excelsior, Stan. And then the much longer introduction by writer-editor Roy Thomas. Shakespeare said the play's the thing, but in the wondrous world of fantasy, it's the idea which is paramount overall. And that has been true of Conan the Barbarian from start to finish. To wit, idea 1932, Robert E. Howard, a young Texas writer, wished to sell a swashbuckling adventure series to Weird Tales, the legendary pulp magazine which introduced H.P. Lovecraft, among others, to a waiting world. But Weird Tales could use stories only if they also had a supernatural or horror aspect. Thus, Howard fused elements of Harold Lamb, Raphael Sabatini, Edgar Rice Burroughs, H.P. Lovecraft, and other favorite writers of the day to come up with the awesome amalgam, which is Conan the Cimmerian. Idea. In the 1950s, a small hardbound SF publishing concern ran out of Conan stories to reprint, so it commissioned L. Sprague de Camp, renowned fantasy writer, to revamp several non-Conan stories by Robert E. Howard into tales of the battling barbarian. De Camp, in turn, was instrumental in getting Conan into paperback editions in the late 1960s, giving Robert E. Howard's creation for the first time the mass audience it truly deserved. Idea. In 1968 and thereabouts, thousands of Marvel Comics readers besieged us with letters pleading for certain epic heroes to be adapted into comics form, including prominently one Conan of Samaria. Stanley and I recognized a trend when we saw one, and I diligently began to read the adventures of Conan and his many imitators. It was a revelation, and my own happy Conan connection has lasted nearly a decade now, through some 3,000 pages of comic book adventures in virtually every possible size and shape. That's more pages, incidentally, than Howard DeCamp and all other Conan pastiches together have written, and I find I'm enjoying it today more than ever. Idea. Since so many Marvel readers have come to our Conan the Barbarian and Savage Sword of Conan magazines since his 1970 comic book debut, it occurred to Marvel and to Ace Temple Books to collect the early issues in full color, 3 to a volume. The first 3 of these are on sale simultaneously, with another half dozen or so volumes projected, and there will be more unless we miss our collective guess. Admittedly, since the comic stories were designed visually for a different format than paperbacks, we've had to cut panels and copy to fit. An imperfect process, but one which was inevitable. Thomas goes on to give kudos to Barry Smith and to highlight how Conan won nearly every award that fans and professionals had to offer, and how the comic series kept alive the name and fame of Robert E. Howard's hero during a several-year period when the paperbacks themselves were out of print. After a refresher on Conan and the Hyborian Age, Thomas closes with, "And now, without further delay, we present the first 3 Marvel Comics chapters in the saga of Conan the Barbarian, Roy Thomas." Now, as I flip through, you'll notice that I'm a little hesitant to open the book too wide. It is 45 years old, and I'm just not 100% sure as to the integrity of the spine, but I have been able to read each story in full. It looks really nice. You can immediately appreciate the quality of the color, starting with the map of the Hyborian Age and the opening page of The Coming of Conan. Pages are thicker than they'd be in a comic book, and when you flip through, as Roy Thomas noted, the issues are uniquely formatted for a small paperback. Again, we see The Coming of Conan, Stan Lee, editor, Roy Thomas, writer, Barry Smith, artist, Dan Adkins, the embellisher, and Sam Rosen is the letterer, based on the character created by Robert E. Howard. Fun thing about this book is the inclusion of a shaman that sees the historical past, the Atlantean King Kull, and the cataclysm that sinks Atlantis. We also see images of the Stone Age past and towards wonders undreamed of, even in this, the height of the Hyborian Age. By the gods, I seem to behold far-off Stygia under another name, in another time. And then we also see images of the future, an astronaut in space. These sights have driven the old man mad. And then issue 2, Lair of the Beastmen. Stanley editor, Roy Thomas writer, Barry Smith artist, and here we have Sal Buscema as the inker and Rosen as the letterer. And then the final story, The Twilight of the Grim Grey God. Again, Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, Barry Smith, Sal Buscema, and Sam Rosen. And as it indicates, freely adapted from Robert E. Howard's story, The Grey God Passes. And this story concludes with, don't miss Volume 2 of the complete Marvel Conan on sale now. Referring back to Roy Thomas's introduction, it does appear that they did miss their collective guess as to the number of projected volumes. As far as I can tell, Ace Tempo published a total of 6 volumes. They'd be fun to track down, but in the end, it'd probably be more cost-effective to just acquire the first omnibus, with the bonus that I can read the stories in their original formatting. I grabbed this one for $17 Canadian, which seems pretty fair. If I were to acquire them, say, via eBay, I'm guessing it'd be north of $150. So unless I come across them in the wild for a fair price, I'm going to be content that I have volume number 1. In Savage Sword of Conan news, the cover for issue number 2 was released. Dave Dorman gives us Conan battling this monstrosity. Issue number 2 releases in April, but before that, we get issue number 1 on February 28th with this awesome Joe Jusko cover. And speaking of Jusko, please do head over and visit YouTuber HobbiesofaMan. He's got a great look at Joe Jusko's art of Edgar Rice Burroughs, plus he's giving the book away. Check it out. Check out the link in the video description. And with that, thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing. And until next time, take it easy, you Stygian Dogs.